Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number 297M mounting bracket. The 297M is not a very common item, but it solves a problem that no other piece of hardware can solve. This is a mounting bracket where you are working on a pair of doors that have a bar-style coordinator or some other stop-mounted hardware, and what you need to do is install a door closer in a parallel arm fashion. So here's a scenario. This allows stop-mounted hardware to be properly installed without damaging the hardware, such as certainly a parallel arm bracket from a door closer, or maybe a surface strike from a surface vertical rod exit device would be common for that. Maybe an auxiliary stop type of hardware, but here's how it works. This bracket is, in the 297 specifically, is for frames that have a soffit or stop width of between 7/8 and 2 1/4. So that is what you're going to want to check to be sure of immediately. They have their 297M if their stop width, if the stop width or the soffit of the frame is greater than 2 1/4, and the soffit of the frame is defined as that portion. Okay, that bracket. And there is an image below this video showing how the bracket is installed. Allows your hardware, when it's installed like that, allows you to run, say, a coordinator, which is the box with the X in it, right underneath there. Now what you're able to do then is, when you have your bar style coordinator, you'll mount this over the coordinator. Then you can attach your parallel arm bracket or your surface strike to this plate and not interrupt the run of what's happening there. Not unusual to see this concept as it pertains to weather stripping as well, even though you have to keep in mind of exactly how you're going to use this as it pertains to other pieces of hardware. So what I mean is, I've realized a better description might be just showing you a piece of frame material. I happen to have just a piece of sample frame here. So this is the soffit itself, and this soffit happens to be about 1 1/4 inches, so the 297M is perfect for that. So it's going to mount like this, whether it's a header or it might be a jam, a strike jam. Okay, you could also, well, you'd have to really lay the math out to be sure that this might work, but you're going to see this installed, okay, at the header of something where you've got this is the door side here. Okay, so your plate will mount something akin to that. And that's the concept of how this will be installed. Okay. Okay, so you're basically going to have an application where the bracket, if this were the header, it's going to mount like this. Somehow like this, depending on the width of the stop, either as far over as here where it's actually butting up to the inside, or it's going to come off a little bit, depending on where it has to be installed, laterally this way in relationship to the stop width. Okay, so you might have to bring it out further to accommodate the installation. You might be able to pull it in a little bit like this. The stop of this is good. The width of this stop, being about 1 1/4 inches, is going to require that to hang off the face of that a bit. And you can see that it's within this area is where a bar coordinator would reside. Okay? then of course your stop applied or soffit applied hardware is going to mount right down to this face. Parallel arm bracket for a door closer is by far the most common reason for it, but you could but surface vertical rods as well, very common for that. In addition, and a coordinator obviously allows you to time the doors so that you close one door prior to another, as it relates to the combination of exit devices used, maybe astragals that are very commonly installed as well. It's going to include screws. Obviously, for drilling and tapping, you're certainly going to want to have a reinforced header for that. You know, what I was thinking about as well was something that a lot of people really don't think about. But imagine this is the door and this is your strike jam. Well, now imagine that you're doing a rim exit device and the strike is mounted on the on the soffit. Your weather stripping, if it's also soffit mounted, will be interrupted by that strike. A lot of people may not realize that you could use such a bracket like this to run your weather stripping underneath it so that you have a continuous point of weather seal, but then attach this down to the frame, moving it out to accommodate, and then attaching the strike plate of your rim-mounted exit device directly to this. A mounting bracket really is what it is. So you could, I've never seen this used in that instance, but I don't see why you couldn't, is the bottom line. It may be somewhat inelegant. It might cause other problems, like significantly reducing the width of the clear opening of the space. But that might be an application as well. You know, gosh, if you've got a exterior door and, you know, here in Chicago, you're going to want contact with weather stripping on the face of the door everywhere, and you certainly don't want to interrupt it for a large strike from an exit device, so you might use that as well. Now, the dimensional properties of the 297M, and by the way, the 297N is the same version of this, except that it's shaped differently, and it's used for stop widths greater than 2 1/4, which would be very common. Let's say you had a 5 3/4 frame, unequal rabbet, so 5.75 minus 5.9325, I think, minus the small rabbet 1.4375. So your stop width is very likely going to be about 2 3/8. So the 297M will be the more common unit to use, and you'll use the M version for a jam depth smaller than 5 3/4 is really where you're going to see that. So you're going to want to lay the math out, and certainly if you have an equal rabbet frame on a 5 3/4 jam depth. These are the rabbets here and here. I'm saying unequal, where you'll have an 1 3/4 accommodated size here, and then an 1 3/8 accommodated size here. But they're a little bit bigger than that. Actually, it might be 1 9/16. I forget the rabbet size on a small frame, but measure your stop width, your soffit width before you determine which is the proper bracket. Now, moving forward, finally, 5 inches the length. Overall width, about 3 1/4. You can see the height over here is about 5/16. Down over here about 1 inch, and then a total height of about 1 5 11/16. Okay. Now let's study where those screw holes are laid out so that you can judge against where that might fall for your application of hardware. From the end, you've got 2 screws there at about 1/2 inch. The next one, about 1 3/4. Over to about 3 1/4, and coming down here to about 4 1/2. Okay. That first dimension was 1/2 inch, and it will certainly be symmetrical. Okay. So that you can install it on either side of the opening. There is finally a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website where you can pull up the ever evolving, improving Hager factory website. But then finally a link to the product catalog where you can pull up all things Hager related. Now Hager's namesake is Hager Hinge. They're everything as it pertains to hinges, commercial and residential. But that's just the tip really of the iceberg. Hager is going to help you with door closers and lock sets and exit devices and electrified hardware and trim and auxiliary hardware such as the 297M, weather stripping, signage, steel filler plates used for steel doors and steel frames, sliding door, pocket, bypass, bifold, sliding doors itself. That catalog is comprehensive in terms of hardware for a particular commercial opening. If you have any questions on the Hager number 297M mounting bracket or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us.